It is. We are now live and recording, and so welcome officially to MUGUT for, what month are we in? October? Yeah. Yep. Welcome to MUGUT for October. A little housekeeping, and then we're to the time over to Christian, who will tell us about November. Give us a 30-second teaser as to what's coming in November, and then he'll introduce Richard, who will then teach us how to keep our life in order. And I have to say that I am personally excited about this because for a long time I've thought Microsoft gives us 432 ways to track things that we ought to do, and they're all unique, and they don't talk to each other, and they don't message each other. And so I'm super excited to find a way to bring order to that chaos. So we'll have Christian do that introduction, then we'll turn the remainder of the time over to Richard. As I said, we're meeting in November. We're not going to meet in December. And so don't bother showing up at 4:30 the last Thursday of December because you'll be alone. January, we have planned a great session where we are going to cover, what are we covering in January? Something super cool with examples from local companies.
Are we doing the cards, right?
Oh yeah, the active cards.
Yeah.
And I've got to tell you that I've thought those things are super cool. The adaptive.io cards. If you have done anything with the adaptive cards and you want to come share, let us know. And if you want to come learn, by all means attend. I'm excited about January. It's going to be a great way to start off 2022. We thought we'd all be alive to see 2022. That's crazy. All right, so before I turn the time over to Christian, we normally say that if you are virtual, put yourself on mute, but seeing this fancy surface from Journey Team, I can see that you're all on mute, so thumbs up. And as long as I'm talking about Journey Team, thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your facilities. Awfully sweet of you. Brian was hesitant to let me in because I don't have the full He-Man beard going on. And then he said, I can see your chin, so I don't think you ought to be allowed into the building.
We would let Noah in, but you were questionable.
Yeah, I was borderline. So thank you, Journey Team, for providing this space for us. We have 4 of us today, which is twice as many as we had last month. and I recognize that not all of you are local, Mr. Rusty Brown. But if you are local, I'd love to have you join us in November if you're comfortable in making the drive to Draper. I recognize that this is a rough neighborhood.
It's pretty sketchy.
There's a 7-Eleven on every corner, and who wants to deal with that? But you're also welcome to join virtually, and we'll do this mixed media stuff probably for the rest of our lives. So, Mr. Christian, we know who you are.
It's a good portrait, man.
The microphone is yours. The likeness is amazing.
I keep forgetting that I have this thing. I just always point out that when I wear this, I've just worn it a couple times around the house, and my wife is like, she won't acknowledge me. She's like, I won't give you a kiss. I just nothing. It's like, so this is yeah. Anyway, personal problems. Okay. Well, hey, thanks everybody for coming. So just really quick introduction. So Richard Calderon has been in the community for a long time. I can't remember, Richard, did you ever speak at one of the SharePoint Saturday Utah events? Did you ever come out?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe I had the opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if we got you because we had quite a few folks that came up from Texas for that. Yeah. But so Richard's been in the space for many, many years. So he is a modern workplace specialist or strategist at Pate Group, based down in Austin. And he's going to be talking, and he'll get in and share details of his session tonight on Tame, that never-ending to-do list. So I'm a big fan of the task tracking, strategy that Microsoft has. It's a little bit chaotic, so maybe he'll give us his opinions of where Microsoft is going. And then before he gives more of his introduction and talks about what he's going to cover tonight, the session next month will be November 30th, so the end of November. We're pushing it to the end of the month so that we just, there's that Thanksgiving thing, and then we, gives us that nice warm fuzzy feeling going through the month of December until we meet again in January. But David Drever is going to be presenting, fellow MVP. He's going to be talking about. So let's see, I thought I had it open right here. He's going to be talking about records management foundations. So he's going to go through and talk about what records management looks like inside of Microsoft 365. So for those that are doing structured collaboration and records management, that world there's a lot going on in that space inside of Microsoft. And so it's going to be great to have David kind of diving in and providing that baseline for everybody. And so with that, Richard, I'll let you talk about yourself for a few minutes and then walk us through.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So thanks everybody for having me join the user group meeting today. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. I see a familiar face. Hey, Noah, good to see you again. Long time. Yeah, as Christian said, and I'll get a screen share going here just to get that process started. So yeah, my role at the Pate Group is what we call a modern workplace strategist. It basically kind of means that I cover the broad set of services in Microsoft 365. My role is really to kind of help listen to customers' needs from the business perspective, and then of course bringing our specialization around the Microsoft 365 set of services to kind of help them understand how do you then map the technology capabilities to solve any number of those business needs. And of course, we're always targeting to try to go with as much sort of out of the platform, out of the box, if you will, to begin with. But we certainly have a lot of expertise around getting into a lot of the custom development as well, whether it comes to extending SharePoint or Teams or using Power Automate and Power Apps, et cetera, to really kind of build something more bespoke for the needs of the customer. But that's my role. And I also spent about 4 years at Microsoft as an Office 365 specialist as well. And so was in on the Blue Badge for a little bit and then came back to the partner ecosystem. Been at the Pate Group now for going on about 2 years. So it's really great place to be. And as Christian mentioned, also based out of Austin, Texas, so here in the Central Time. What I thought I would spend a little bit of time speaking to you guys today was when Christian was asking me about some things to talk about with you guys, I had this particular session kind of at the ready, and it is something that I'm extremely passionate about, quite honestly. I tend to be sort of a tasks person in terms of just trying to keep track of the madness that's going on a day-to-day basis of things going on. So, things that I know I need to keep track of just for myself, and then things that I need to kind of raise visibility to for others because they also want to have some understanding as to what I'm working on, and I want to have some understanding as to what they're working on and so forth. So we're going to talk about how Microsoft kind of brings all those things together with 3 primary endpoints. That is the Microsoft To Do application. Whether you realize that you had access to it or not, you probably do. As long as your Exchange mailbox, your Outlook mailbox is in the cloud, you have access to To Do. And then on the team or group-based task tracking, going to talk a little bit about this thing called Microsoft Planner and sort of what the good and the bad and the ugly is about that. And then kind of Microsoft's longer term vision, at least at the moment, as to how you kind of bring all those things together in the context of Microsoft Teams. So just got the QR codes up on the screen. If you happen to have your phone handy and you're interested in connecting with me either on Twitter or LinkedIn, you can just point your camera at those QR codes and that'll take you directly to my profiles. Yeah.
This session will be up on YouTube later this week. And so they can always watch it later and pause it.
Yeah.
And take a picture.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's kind of just set a little bit of expectation for some things. Like kind of, always want to try to have a goal, ideally. We're going to spend an hour together at least. What are we really trying to get out of it? So, at the very least, just trying to get a general understanding of these capabilities and the different features within these various applications for managing tasks. Maybe learn a couple of little simple methods and techniques for trying to help you stay organized. Again, I'll share some things that work for me. That's one of the really interesting things about this particular area of productivity is it's very unique, in my opinion, to every single person. Everybody's kind of got their own way of doing things. So take it for what it's worth. Some things might work for you. They might work for others. They might work for me, but not for everybody. And then certainly, hope that if you haven't taken an opportunity to start taking advantage of some of these tools, that you'll see that there are certainly some clear benefits to leveraging these task tracking tools in Microsoft 365. And so hopefully you'll, maybe be slightly inspired to try to dig in and give it a shot. So as I mentioned before, from Microsoft's perspective in M365, there really are 2, now sort of 3 kind of hero or key task management endpoints for task tracking. And I will say that, in the recent years, Microsoft certainly has looked holistically across all the different types of information and content in Microsoft 365 and has concluded that tasks was always kind of thought of as just sort of auxiliary in the past, compared to like files and documents. And, those were always the first class content types, if you will. But tasks are certainly considered a first-class content type now because, again, we always have more things than we possibly can get done on a day-to-day basis. And we need a very solid way to be able to track, manage, understand what's going on, and help us from dropping the ball, if you will. So in terms of my tasks, as I tend to refer to it, that's what Microsoft To Do is for. In terms of our tasks for group, that is certainly what Planner is designed for. And then really kind of bringing that all together into a singular view. Again, Microsoft really driving all kinds of productivity tools and so forth into Microsoft Teams so that you can avoid that kind of context switching going from one app to another. There is an app in Microsoft Teams, a personal app that's called Tasks. Today, it's got a little bit of an identity crisis. It's called Tasks by Planner and To Do. Supposedly, Microsoft has said that they're going to kind of shorten that eventually to just be called Tasks. It hasn't happened yet. But supposedly that will be the case. So you could just simply refer to it as the Tasks app in Teams. And so we're going to look at all three of those things here a little bit today. In terms of where you can get these tools and get access to them from an endpoint perspective. So you can really get access to them across all the different platforms. So Windows 10 and 11, it works just fine. They've upgraded recently to 11. If you haven't had a chance to upgrade to Windows 11, would certainly encourage you to do so. It's really a nice user experience. Some really interesting new bells and whistles above Windows 10. If you're a Mac user, you can get to them in Mac as well. And then obviously for iOS, Android, whether it's an iPhone or iPad or an Android phone or tablet, and then just like everything else in the cloud, you can certainly get access to them just directly from a web browser. One little thing just to point out is when it comes to Planner is there is no dedicated sort of desktop installable app for Planner specifically. There is a dedicated desktop app installed for To Do, and obviously you know that for Teams. And then there are dedicated apps mobile for all of these on iOS and Android, but there's no dedicated app for Planner. You really only get access to Planner either through a browser interface or directly through Teams, which we're going to look at a little bit as well. Okay. All right, so let's just kind of start off with the My Task side of things. So tracking with Microsoft To Do and Outlook, I put in quotes because whether you realize it or not, or if you've used this in the past, if you've used Outlook tasks before, just know that that, in fact, is really where tasks are still stored. They are still stored essentially in Exchange Online inside of your Outlook mailbox. So the tasks that you've used before in Outlook is essentially the data store for tasks in To Do. So we'll talk just a tiny bit about where that integration point lies. But, you know, the marketing slide, like what is it? It's all your individual tasks all in one place. And again, just kind of pointing out individual tasks in this case, not necessarily designed as team tasks, although you can do sharing of custom lists if you choose to do so. So there's some really interesting capabilities in To Do that are geared towards trying to just help you stay focused on what matters. So I'll highlight to you here a little bit this concept of what they call My Day, something that I really, really like about this idea that's kind of different in many ways from just sort of a flat list of items that you might write on a OneNote page or something, is it allows you to get really focused and intentional on what you're trying to accomplish at any given point in time. So for a particular day, for example, it's probably unrealistic to think that you're going to be able to accomplish all 50 things you have on your task list. So rather than kind of overwhelm yourself with that every single day, you can use this My Day feature of To Do to really focus on, let's say, the 5 things that are reasonable to get done today. You're going to add them to your My Day list, and then you're going to be extremely satisfied as you're checking them off the list as you go. That's one of the capabilities inside of To Do that I really advocate to try using. And then there's other things about it that are kind of built into the intelligence of the cloud. It looks at certain factors around tasks and makes suggestions of what tasks you might want to look into. You can sort of think of that. I'm sure all of you are now starting to get those Viva Insight emails that you get on a regular basis where the cloud is kind of telling you, hey, you said this, you said that, or you want to follow up on this, do you want to follow up on that? It's not quite that intelligent yet. It hasn't quite built into all that fabric, but it does take into account certain aspects of your tasks to make suggestions and recommendations to you. And then all the other things you would just expect of a task list. You can set due dates, you can set reminders, you can break the task down into smaller steps and so forth. And I mentioned you could use it for sharing your lists with other people in your team, although I don't tend to use it for that, and I don't really tend to advise people to use it for that. That's why we tend to switch to Planner, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in a second. So I mentioned My Day. Again, we're going to demo some of this stuff so you can see what this looks like. But again, the whole point is really to give you an opportunity to really just focus in on the things that you want to accomplish on a given day. The really cool thing about it is that depending on your time zone and when midnight is for you, midnight every day, that My Day list just clears and it starts with a blank slate so that you can basically start over on the next day with picking from the list of items that you want to try to accomplish. It doesn't delete anything. It just simply clears the list, and anything that you didn't get done maybe from the day before becomes likely something it suggests for the next day. There are a series of what are called smart lists that are built into To-Do, and then you can also create any number, I forget the number, but it's pretty high, of custom lists in a way to just kind of organize tasks and so forth. But smart lists are really kind of a way to just aggregate certain list items or certain tasks, if you will, based on certain factors, whether they're scheduled items or whether they're assigned to you and things like that. So we'll look at that a little bit more as we go. Again, due dates, reminders, these are all the kinds of things that we would just normally expect to be able to have with tasks. You can set recurring tasks as well too. So let's say, like in my area, we have to log our timesheet at least once a week so that we can track what we've been billing against customers. So I have a recurring task in my to-do that reminds me every Friday afternoon to ensure I've completed my timesheet. And it just reminds me every week without me having to do a thing because it says recurring. You can also, as you might expect, you can break down tasks into smaller sort of subtasks, if you will. Microsoft is notorious for not necessarily always naming things in a standard way. So in To-Do, they call these subtasks steps. In Planner, they call them checklists for some reason. But basically, it's the same concept where you can break down a task into smaller tasks so that you can have a smaller running list of things that you want to check off the list. You can attach items to tasks. You can put notes and so forth. And then specifically, if you're using the web-based interface of To-Do, you can also categorize tasks. Interestingly enough, that you can only do that at the moment from the web-based To-Do interface. You can't do that from the To-Do desktop, and you can't do that from the mobile app for some reason. Don't know why. But those categories are exactly the categories that you set up inside of Outlook. So if you're a fan of tagging email or calendar items with a category, you can also tag your tasks with those categories, again, only from the To-Do web app in this case. And then last slide before, or actually last two slides before kind of getting into a little demo. So I mentioned that tasks are really tied into Outlook. So they do, in fact, appear in Outlook. If you're creating tasks in To-Do, they will show up in that sort of list of different ways you can slice and dice your views of tasks in Outlook. That said, Microsoft did not carry over every single bit of kind of metadata columns from the tasks in Outlook over into To-Do. So there are some things that you just won't see in terms of details, like task status or the percentage complete and et cetera. So if you're really, really dependent and relying on a number of those kinds of details in your tasks, then you might still have to default back to Outlook tasks in some case to do that, because again, those don't translate over to To-Do. And then just kind of a brief tease here that, again, all of these experiences are really, really nice on the mobile side. And for that matter, I tend to lead with this, especially on To-Do. I will honestly say that I spend probably at least half, maybe more of the time kind of organizing task items and checking off items on my personal to-do list with Microsoft To-Do from the mobile app, because my phone is basically kind of with me anywhere I go all the time. If I'm running an errand or stopping by the grocery store on the way home and I suddenly think of something, I don't hesitate anymore. I just pull my phone out of my pocket, launch the To-Do app, and then log it, if you will, and then forget about it, because I know that I've tracked it. At least I can come back to it later at some point. So it really, really, depending on whether you use iOS or Android, doesn't matter. The experience is virtually identical. Highly encourage you, if you haven't already, to download, install the To-Do mobile app, sign in with your Microsoft 365 account, and you'll be able to start taking advantage of that from the mobile side as well. Okay. So before getting into the demo, yeah, go ahead.
Just have you? I raised my hand. I will lower my hand now.
Yeah.
One of the things that I don't understand, why some of the differences between To-Do and Planner. Why don't they just fix this? But one of the features that I love and was asked for with Planner and tasks in To-Do, in tasks in Teams, is if you have a bunch of steps in a task, you can promote a step up to a standalone task. Love that.
Yeah.
And why is that missing from To-Do? I don't understand. Concerned listener signing off.
Yeah. No, I agree entirely with you. I mean, you could certainly argue it kind of goes both ways, right? There's certain capabilities in To-Do that you just don't get in Planner and vice versa. And some of them maybe that tend to be more useful or less than others. But, probably, and if you guys don't know this already, the To-Do mobile app, or the To-Do app in general, was an acquisition from Microsoft, as, tends to be their MO. It was a company that was branded through an app called Wunderlist for many, many years. So if you'd ever used Wunderlist before, Microsoft acquired Wunderlist and then basically kind of rolled that whole infrastructure into the To-Do service and then kind of rebranded it as Microsoft To-Do. So all of the goodness that came from Wunderlist kind of carried over for the most part. And the way that app was structured was, kind of built from Wunderlist. Planner was really built, entirely by Microsoft engineering, kind of from the ground up. And so built from a very kind of different vantage point. And again, we're going to look at more of that here in just a minute too. But, the whole Planner boards with cards and columns and things like that. And so, that engineering team thought of a use case where it made sense to be able to easily promote up a task from a checklist item to a full-blown task. And I guess, I don't know, it just maybe wasn't something that was on the radar of the Wunderlist team originally. And so the To-Do team also, at least at the moment, not that I'm aware of, has the intention of being able to do that. I think it's a great feature request. But one of the many things that you could kind of look at and say like, hey, wish there was some commonality there. And I'll also give you my opinion on how the Tasks app in Teams, where there's shortcomings there, and also some insight that I gathered from one of the Microsoft To-Do program managers I spoke to recently. Nothing set in stone, but just some ideas around maybe where that's going. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a sec. Okay. All right. So really just brief show and tell kind of here. I will show you at least just launching the To-Do app on the desktop in Windows. It's not a super sophisticated looking application. It's really pretty simple. And I think that's what it's intended for. It's intended to be simple. It's intended to not make you overthink all of these things. But, it's a full-blown app. It's, scalable in the sense that when you, size it down, you get the little hamburger menu and all that kind of stuff. But essentially on the left-hand side, very similar to kind of Mail, you're going to have your set of lists. The ones up here up top are those smart lists that I mentioned to you a minute ago. And then here's a whole series of custom lists that I created. I will point out one thing around custom lists. You can create, again, a number of these to organize tasks in any way that makes sense to you. So there is no kind of right or wrong way to do this. You can even group tasks into these tasks groups so that you can then kind of collapse them down and, have even kind of further organization. So you have the two levels, sort of a group and then the actual custom lists themselves. I'll tell you just in my way of doing things, just in sharing, I actually put a grouping for what I consider to be my work-related to-do list items, and then what I call my life, or you could say personal-related to-do list items. And I put them all together in To-Do under my Microsoft 365, my Pate Group account. And the reason why I choose to do it that way is because it suits my workflow. Like, I don't really think about things I need to get done anymore as like, does that matter whether I'm doing it during the workday, or does that matter if it's a work thing that I'm doing at midnight because it happens to be something I'm thinking about? I just get stuff done. And so I put them all together in one system so that I can easily see them and find them all together. You don't have to do it that way. As a matter of fact, if you have either an Outlook.com or a Microsoft account in general, where you've got sort of free OneDrive and free email, you actually do have access to Microsoft To-Do in the cloud for free, whether you knew it or not. But that is going to be tied to your consumer Microsoft account. And so you'd have to switch accounts to see those tasks if you did it that way. And again, that just doesn't suit my workflow. I just like to see them all together in one place. So that's why I put them all together in a single, under a single account, just logged in with my work account. But again, here's that kind of, blank list called My Day when you start off with, there's nothing here for today. There is this little sort of, light bulb, I guess, if you will, icon that is the suggestions list. And when you click on that, it pops open this little panel that is the, again, things that to do is saying you didn't get these checked off the list from before. You've entered them in at some point and you've organized them in some way, but you hadn't gotten them checked off. So you might want to consider adding these to your day. And you might wonder to yourself, well, how is it suggesting which ones to do in this case? Well, at the very least, ones that have a due date, maybe that is up and coming, or for sure, if it's past due, it's going to recommend those items to you. If an item has been assigned to you and it's due today, or if things are coming up, at some point, these are obviously earlier, these were due yesterday in this case. That's generally how it's recommending, suggesting items to you. And so the way that you add them to my day is as simple as just hitting this little plus sign. So if I say, okay, I want to check this one, I want to add this one to my day, I want to add this one to my day, these two were due, so I want to add that to my day, and maybe I've got something, personal like mulching my flower beds in the yard I want to get done today, I can just check these little boxes, check the little plus signs, it adds them all in here. And then now when you see this list, this again is intended to be a much more achievable list of things to get done on any given day. Okay, so you can focus on this. You can sort these in different ways. I can sort these by, when they're due or when they were created. You can sort them by what's called importance. That's as simple as just coming and hitting the little star next to these. So if I star any of these, it's giving a little more weight to the item, adding importance to it. So therefore, again, if I didn't get an important item done today, if I didn't check the little button here, then to do is going to likely suggest ones that are important above other ones that aren't marked important. So this is the My Day list. Again, adding tasks is as simple as, saying I want to add a new task here, and I just hit enter and it's done. When you click on any of these tasks, it pops open the pane, which gives you all the details about the task. So here's again where you can add steps, and you can think of these again as the subtasks. I've got to get these things done, this done, all of these in best case before I can check off the task. I mentioned that you can mark as important. Notice here it says that it's added to my day, but you can remove it from your day if you don't want it to be part of your day. Reminders, so again, maybe it's due next week, add a due date, so maybe it's in fact due. I want to get reminded next week, but in fact it's not due until November 1st maybe. You could set a recurrence, as I mentioned. You can add files and notes. So all kinds of things that you would, again, typically expect to be able to do with tasks, you can do from this pane. And then I mentioned the smart list. I'll just kind of briefly go over some of this with you as well. So the list that's called important is exactly what it sounds like. Any item that you starred in this case is going to show here. So that's nice because if these items cross over into any of these other lists, because that's how you're organizing, then they'll just show in one view here because you've starred all of them. The list that's called planned is actually driven entirely by the due date of a task. So as long as you have set a due date on a task, which isn't required, by the way, but it's recommended. So if you set a due date on a task, then it is going to show in the smart list called planned and give you, again, sort of a view of being able to understand what kinds of things do I need to get done just simply by the fact that I've marked due dates on them. So I want to focus on things that are due past due or things that are due today or tomorrow, etc. Okay?
Hey, Richard.
Yeah.
Richard, if you set a reminder date for a task, will that also pop up in Outlook?
I believe so. Now, actually, I want to make sure I understand the question. When you say the reminder, like does the reminder in Outlook pop up for a task? Was that the question there, Kevin?
Yeah.
It's a good question. You're kind of stumping me on that one. I don't actually know for certain if it does. I feel like it does, but now I'm questioning myself whether it does or doesn't.
We'll all go home and test it, but I've stumped the presenter, so I'm going to go home now. My work here is done.
It won't be the first time. You can probably stump me again here in a little bit, but yeah, happy to check into that one for you and see if that one, because again, reminders that come in all kinds of shapes and sizes and forms. The fact that these are stored in Outlook, again, I'm kind of inclined to feel like it does, but I'm not certain. I'll have to check for that. Okay, so other smart list again. There's one called all, exactly what it sounds like. This is just if you want to see an entire running list of all the tasks. If you just want to overwhelm yourself and see the 500 tasks that are in your to-do list in one fell swoop, you could look at this. Completed is also exactly what it sounds like. Anything and everything that you have in fact checked off. So let's say I went back to my day and I said this one's done and I checked new task off, so it moves it down to completed. There's also this very satisfying little ding from to do that comes. You'll see that that new task is also here in this list as well. I actually think this is an interesting one that you could use maybe for like, manager check-ins or, for sure like performance reviews. I mean, as just one way to demonstrate the sheer volume of activities that you have in fact marked for yourself to get done and then have checked off as completed. This would be a really great tool to be able to pull up in a session with your manager and go, let me just kind of walk you through, like within the past 3 months, all of the things that I have completed. And you don't have to go down one by one, but you could just sort of show them this list. I think that would be really impactful. The one called Assigned to Me is actually kind of leans into the next segment. It's a really interesting one because there is an integration in To Do with Planner. So again, in Planner, which is really more towards team or group-based task tracking, when a planner task has been assigned to you, it automatically shows up in this smart list here called Assigned to Me. Interestingly enough, in the Tasks app, it's called Assigned to You. So again, little discrepancy in the labels, but there is a smart list called Assigned to Me or You in To Do that is in fact any task that has been assigned to you in Planner. So if you just kind of look at some of the metadata here, you can see that this is coming from a plan called the product launch event, and the assignee is me. This is coming from product launch event. This is coming from a plan called event plan. But that's really useful, again, just from a to-do perspective, to be able to, within a quick click, get to seeing a whole list of items that are more on the planner side that are assigned to you. And you can, again, you can interact with these very much the same way that you do with to-do tasks, mark them as important, check them off the list, add metadata and so forth, and it synchronizes that back to Planner. Flagged emails, the kind of the last smart list, is also exactly what it sounds like, just because, as I said, your tasks are stored in Outlook. So with your mail, if you had been accustomed to sort of flagging email as a way to track things that are going on, any email that you flag in Outlook will automatically show inside the smart list. So again, that's kind of nice because it just gives you a quick way to be able to see flagged email items within this view. And then the tasks list isn't really a smart list per se. It's really just sort of the default landing location for tasks. When you're creating them, they just sort of drop into this default list called tasks. Okay. Lastly, one thing that I will point out that is sort of a good practice that I use in To Do all the time is you do have the ability to do the sort of hashtags in To Do. So anything that you hashtag, let's say you want to mark a item as a sales activity of some sort. You can say sales, follow up with project a customer or something like that. When you do a hashtag, it's a little bit difficult to see here, but it actually puts a little hyperlink on that tag. And then what happens there is it makes that clickable. So now when you click on a hyperlink in To Do, it actually runs a quick search, as you can see from the search box here. It searches for any task that has been marked with either in the task name or description, the name itself, or in the notes. So if you put it in the task name or the notes, this hashtag, it'll surface those tasks in one single view. And I think that's great because it just gives you another way to organize and then easily pull together a list of tasks that are related to each other based off a hashtag in this case. So if I looked at everything Project Falcon related, I could click on that. Or if I looked at, if I went back to sales and looked at everything Northwind Traders, maybe there's just the one. But you have the ability to be able to add these hashtags into tasks as well. Okay. So a little tip for you there on the To Do side. I will just point out again, one of my favorite things to do, no pun intended, is to be able to use the mobile experiences. I'll pull some of these up here, assuming that it's going to cooperate with me here in a sec. Yep, there we go. To use To Do. So I've got my iPhone here. This is an Android device, if I can get it to wake up. But there are actually widgets for To Do in iOS today. If you've upgraded to, it's either iOS 14 or something like that, that allows for these widgets now. And then widgets have been around in Android for a long time. But as you can see, there's a To Do list widget for Android that's showing me my day lists. And then there's one here for my day as well. But, I can launch it. It gives me the To Do app in just a second here, at least kind of give it a second to think about it. There it goes. It synchronized all those items. So everything that I put in my day is going to automatically synchronize to my mobile device. I can start checking things off the list here relatively easily. And then again, my favorite way to interact with my phone, rather than sort of saying I want to add a new task and then, starting to kind of fat finger in, stuff and backspacing and all that jazz, is just to use the phone for the best thing that it's used for, which is to talk at your phone. And so I often just immediately open it up. I'll hit that little microphone and I'll say, get that really important thing done. It's due at 5 p.m. tomorrow. Notice that it's even put, it said 6:06, but anyway, and it's still going. But you get the idea, is that I have the ability to be able to quickly get in a whole lot of text using the whole voice speech to text recognition of a phone. And it does a pretty good job of doing that, actually. So I don't hesitate ever, whenever something comes to mind that I need to get accomplished, I will usually crack open the to-do app on my mobile phone, activate the microphone, speak at it quickly, hit enter, and then just put it away, not think about it anymore until I come back to my desk later, maybe, and then I'll go back into to-do and sort of triage and things like that. That's my other tip that I would suggest. Definitely take advantage of the mobile device. Let's see, I thought I saw a comment or a question come up. Was it from Christian? What app are you using to share your mobile devices? I actually use an app called A Power Mirror. It's just one of the many apps you can probably download, and I think I licensed like a lifetime plan for it.
There's a number of them that are out there. I was always wondering, which one do you use and prefer? So,
yep, A Power Mirror is the one I use, and it seems to work pretty well. And I plug all mine in. You could do it Wi-Fi if you wanted to, but if you're going to do that kind of stuff at a conference or whatever, we all know how conference Wi-Fi tends to cooperate. So I just plug it all in from USB. Okay, let's do this. Let's go back to slides a little bit here and just kind of pick up. I know that we're probably more than halfway through, not where I was planning to start. I was planning to start here. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Planner and doing shared tasks. So again, the marketing slide, Planner is defined as sort of simple work management for your team. I want to kind of mention one thing right out of the gate. Planner was never really designed and isn't intended for kind of true project management. It's not meant for a PM per se who's trying to manage projects, certainly a portfolio of projects. It just isn't suited for that, and be able to track dependencies of tasks. This has to get done before that can get done, and who are the resources, and do I want to sort of level those resources, and Gantt charts and all that kind of stuff, which Microsoft Project is really well suited for. That's not what Planner is designed for. Planner is really just designed, if you will, for a group of people. It could be a team, a department, a functional group. It could be a party planning committee. Doesn't really matter. But it's a group of people who just want to be able to track who's doing what, and to be able to assign tasks, see the status, and just generally understand, what's everybody doing in a single application. That's really what Planner is for. So I consider it more sort of self-managing of a team rather than a dedicated PM and so forth. But again, it's built by Microsoft Engineering from the ground up to be collaborative in the sense that you have the ability to do commenting and, that kind of thing. So we'll get into talking about that here a little bit. The Planner Hub, which you can get to through the web, so a browser, whatever your browser of choice is. When you launch the Planner app, you'll land on what's called the Planner Hub. And again, it's sort of that starting place to be able to see any plans that you are a member of. You can favorite plans, which basically just kind of allow you to see them easily in the Planner Hub. You can see all your recent plans and so forth. And there's even a really special list called My Tasks, which, similar to To-Do, is going to show you all the tasks that are assigned to you across plans. So again, useful to be able to use the Planner Hub going into the My Tasks view at the very least, so that you can easily hone in on the tasks, the team-related tasks or group-related tasks that are assigned to you in a single view, and then you can filter and sort and do all kinds of things from there. If you're a member of a team by default, you can set up plans too. So that's kind of sort of open collaborative nature in this case. Plans are tied to Microsoft 365 groups. So when you create plans, you either create a new Microsoft 365 group, or you have the ability now to also add plans into existing Microsoft 365 groups, and they can be private or public. And I haven't updated this slide yet to kind of hint at Microsoft is soon releasing this whole notion of non-Microsoft 365 group plans, that are going to be referred to as lightweight plans. But the idea behind it is, I guess they got enough feedback from the user community that, hey, plans are great, but the fact that they have to be tied to a Microsoft 365 group, it tends to be cumbersome and maybe is actually disruptive and causes friction to getting things accomplished. So Microsoft has come up with this separate concept of planner plans called lightweight plans that won't be tied to Microsoft 365 group. And I have to check the roadmap as to when they're expecting those, but they've been talking about that for a while. So be on the lookout for that as well. In terms of planner plans, the concepts are a little bit different. So rather than these custom lists, you have these things called buckets. Buckets are basically kind of like categories, if you will. So again, there's no right or wrong, but in terms of how to sort of segment or group together tasks, you create them in these things called buckets. They show as these vertical columns in what they call a planner board view. And then when you click on any of these tasks themselves, again, you're going to get a pop-up that shows you all the details of the tasks. It's going to be in the center of the screen as opposed to a pop-out on the right of the screen panel like in To Do. But again, we'll look at a little bit more of that. And then all the things you'd expect to be able to do. How do I track the progress of planner tasks? So you can use grouping, you can use filtering. There's a lot of built-in views that unfortunately are not customizable. Microsoft has pretty much locked down how you're able to configure Planner so that you're really kind of limited, if you will, to only the capabilities that they put in the group by or the filter. I know a lot of my customers have asked, can we extend Planner to add custom attributes? And for whatever Microsoft Engineering's kind of wisdom here, they've decided, nah. And so they're kind of keeping it locked to what you have available in Planner at the moment. But in addition to the board view, which is the primary view in Planner, you also have chart views, which is a nice, real kind of lightweight or simple visual way of tracking tasks, such as how many are left and who's assigned to what, and so on and so forth, what buckets they're in. So you have a charts view, and then you also have a schedule view, which is entirely what people would expect to see, something calendar driven, if you will. And so you have both a week and a month view that you can toggle between. And these are entirely driven by either a due date at the very least, or you can also set start dates for a task as well as a due date. And so when you set one of those or both, they will in fact show up in the schedule view. And there's a nice little integration where you can connect this planner schedule view to Outlook so that you can in fact see this calendar view either side by side or even overlapping with your Outlook calendar. That's a nice little integration, I think, that, again, most people tended to expect to see from a schedule tracker of some sorts. And then just a little hint kind of into the last piece of this session today, kind of using Planner inside of Microsoft Teams. As I mentioned before, there is no dedicated desktop application for Planner, but you can, in fact, interact with Planner inside of Microsoft Teams, essentially as a web view of Planner plans. And so there's some really nice integrations with Teams in the simple fact that, say, when a Planner task is assigned to you, then you can receive those assignment notifications as Teams notifications. So there's some, again, some ongoing integration points there with Planner. Okay, so going to kind of, oops, that's the wrong one. I had this one open ready. Okay, so looking at a demo here in this case of Office 365, if you've never done this before, I'd highly encourage you to, again, open your browser of choice, go to office.com, and assuming you're signed in with your work account, your Microsoft 365 account, you're going to see a page something like this that is customized entirely to you, showing you information and recommended content specific to you based on all kinds of factors, you know, what your role is, what sites you belong to, what documents you've visited lately, and so forth. This is what they call the Office 365 homepage. On the left-hand side, you have this sort of app bar. It's the same concept as in Teams, where you have sort of an app bar on the left-hand side. And then obviously we all know and love this thing that they affectionately refer to as the waffle iron, but it's actually called the app launcher that opens up, again, another view of all the apps you have access to. Again, this is going to be driven entirely by licensing. So based on licensing and permissioning, you may not see all these different apps here, but here's To Do, for example, and a lot of other familiar ones, but then there is also an app for Planner. So when you launch Planner in the browser, it will take you to this Planner Hub. The Planner Hub, again, is sort of that starting point for Planner. just to kind of get a snapshot overview of things that are going on. So these are some of the plans that I have favorited. I can see sort of how many tasks are left and so forth. And then when I click into them, I can get into the details of the plan itself. This is an example of a planner board. Again, the planner board is this kind of notion of these columns that they call buckets. It is sort of vertically scrollable, so you can add new buckets here by simply clicking up top and saying, I want to add a new bucket 1, and then I want to add a new bucket 2, and so forth. And again, there is no right or wrong, but these are just ways for you to continually organize your tasks. And again, it's scrollable in a vertical fashion, which sometimes kind of throws people off, but that is the paradigm for Planner. And then any of these tasks again here, which is showing you sort of a basic snapshot, is at the very least showing you the title of the task, if there has been a due date assigned, and who is assigned to the task. But when you select any of these, you'll get that pop over that shows you a lot more detail about the task itself. So in addition to those other items, you can see labels, for example. Labels is really, think of it as another way to put metadata on a task. So as I mentioned in To Do, you can do this thing called hashtags. In Planner, you can do up to 25 now. They just recently, within the past, I don't know, 6 months or so, increased the number of labels that you can apply to a task up to 25. Before it was like 6 or something only. But you can rename these so they can be something specific. You can see what bucket it belongs to. You can move tasks into buckets. You can choose from one of 3 progresses, which is whether it's started, in progress, or completed. That's one of the ones people complain about. They usually want to have a little bit more nuance to the progress of tasks. You can also set priority, so whether it's urgent or a low priority. You can do notes, as you might expect. Here's that checklist items. Again, this is the equivalent of a step in To Do. But this is where you can say, I want to check these off the list before I come and check this off the list. And there's even a little progress indicator and so forth. And this is the thing where Christian was mentioning. I can actually, if I click on this little arrow, up arrow here, this can promote a checklist task to its own full-blown task. If I suddenly realize at some point that, hey, this item needs to have its own comments and own subtasks and so forth, you can do that in Planner. Can't do that in To Do. You can add attachments. What's nice about this is now you can add attachments either just uploaded from your computer, or you can link to tasks in files in Teams or so forth. And then the comments in tasks is useful, but also a little disconnected to me in some of my opinion, because again, it's sort of like, when do I do Planner tasks versus sort of conversations in Teams versus, you know, different ways that I can do that? Or do I have comments embedded in a document that I've attached? So there's some work I think Microsoft certainly needs to do to try to make more kind of a cohesive commenting or ongoing about that. But comments is something you can also apply to tasks as well.
Can you tag people in comments, Richard?
Pardon me?
Can you tag people in comments or use
Not-
hashtags?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, I don't believe you can. Yeah, like if I try to tag somebody here in this demo, yeah, it doesn't, unfortunately. So
That I
again,
believe that was a request on user voice that I've
Yeah.
heard that been asked for.
yeah, I think that's
Seems like it might be
that's
useful.
true. Yep, absolutely.
Would you-
So that's the general idea behind the tasks themselves. Some of the kind of, you know, stepping back a little bit into the board features that I think are really useful. Number one is it's a nice interface in terms of just drag and drop. So for example, if I just needed to rearrange tasks, I mean, I can easily just move these tasks around by dragging them into different buckets. That's really nice because it's a swift way to, maybe you're having a weekly stand-up with your team. You can reorganize tasks quickly by just dragging them around. Same thing with the buckets themselves. If I need to move that bucket all the way up to the front, I can just drag them. So the interface is really pretty nice. Let me make that a little smaller there.
So
It seems like,
hey, Richard, there's a, oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
it
yeah.
seems like it used to be that you could link Power Automate into when things change from one bucket to another.
Yeah.
And so you might use that as a great way to send out a status or a note or a change log.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was the comment I was going to make, that there are some third-party tools that do a good job of keeping that log, that history, so you knew where it was created,
Yeah.
when and by whom it was moved over into another bucket. That kind of logging of that capability and keeping that traceability is sometimes it's a good auditing capability.
Do you know any of the, do you know specific ones off the top of your head that do that?
So I know Canvo does that.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah, I think to the point that was made, yeah, Power Automate, just again, because it is that sort of flow engine behind all things Microsoft 365 and beyond related. There's certainly lots of hooks that you can tie into when something happens in Planner, initiate this Power Automate flow to go do something, essentially. So there's kind of built-in ways that you can do that. And then, yeah, I'm interested to explore some of those other vendors. Yeah, question from the room?
Yeah, so just to, I mean, maybe it's just obvious, right? But like so many times we get into these use cases of, hey, well, we need to track a submission of some sort. We need to track something. And the minute that there's an assignment, and then there's the minute that the requirement also says, hey, and notify someone that it got assigned to them, Planner works great for that, because now I don't have to handle notifications, right? I don't have to handle like, hey, Christian, this got assigned to you, and now I have to do a flow that sends you an email notification. Like,
Right.
no, put it in a Planner and assign it to someone and let Planner handle the outstanding task that's pending.
Well,
right?
so one example of that, if you had a info@journeyteam.com, you could hook flow into that and have those emails get dumped into a bucket here in Planner.
Yeah,
And then
and
Planner
now I
takes over.
don't. Yeah, now I don't have to notify a bunch of people of outstanding things that need to be handled.
And then if you had somebody assigned to that input bucket, they could then assign it to, this is a SharePoint thing, so it goes into the kit bucket, and then you've got the ball.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely valid use case. As a matter of fact, just to kind of show one of the things that Microsoft did at the very least to integrate, actually it's down here. There is built in a really nice integration with Message Center in the M365 Admin Center that if you wanted to turn this on, you could, that basically says, I want to create a plan that is this Message Center task that basically kind of continually grabs, and you can specify which groups of products or which particular tasks show up that you want to drop into a planner board like this. So you then have the ability to come into this whenever these updates have landed and then assign them to people and so forth, like especially for the ones where there's an action required that Microsoft is recommending. Yeah, that's an integration hook there. So don't know, and actually kind of doubt that they're using Power Automate for that, but still nonetheless, I mean, they might. It's a good example of being able to take some use case like that where something happens over here, but then move that data over into a planner board so that you have tasks to assign. Let me just kind of go back to some of these to show, again,
Just
there's
grab that link, by the way, of how to do that in Planner. I just posted it. So
awesome. Thank you. Back on the board, just to kind of round this part of the discussion out. So again, I mentioned before that you can then do some grouping and filtering of this information to really pivot on the data to make informed decisions and really get a better understanding as to what's going on. So again, in addition to being able just to see who all the members here are in the plan, you can also do filtering. So if I needed to filter and just see, you know, I only want to see the tasks that are assigned to Richard in this case. There's only one task that's assigned to me at the moment, but you could do filtering in this case. Or the ones that I know are always useful are the ability to pivot based on a grouping. So again, the default view in the board view is by tasks by bucket, but then again, you could do group by assigned to. So now I can look across the board and see that these tasks are assigned to these various team members, and that gives me a chance to kind of go around the table and talk about assignments. I can look at progress. So again, this is always an interesting one because people want to know, like, what's the deal with certain tasks that are overdue? Well, this, you can see how long I've had this demo out here, but the tasks that are overdue and that have not started yet, you know, what's the deal? We need to get that moving. And, you know, we can say, well, no, as a matter of fact, that one is started already. It has been started today and it's due, you know, next week or something. So you can easily just go update the data on tasks. Due date, or sorry, labels. Due date is also another one that's critically important. People want to see and focus on this one that's late, right? And the reason why I think this is good too is because it gives you a chance again to, if you wanted to, maybe one person in the team, not necessarily a project manager, but a team lead, is the one who has the screen share up and you're talking through all the statuses. And you could say, well, you know, okay, this is late, but we're going to move that into this week, and I'm going to move this one into next week, and I'm going to push this one way out into the future. And again, as you see, just by dragging stuff around, it's changed the metadata on the tasks so that now I didn't have to click into every single one of those tasks and actually update things like due dates and so forth. So a nice way to be able to use that quickly Labels, as I mentioned, is something you could take advantage of. So if you are using any of these custom labels, which you can just simply click on and name here, you can see the labels grouping, and then priority, which also is another one that I think a lot of teams tend to gravitate towards, because if you've got any of these that are marked as urgent, again, you're going to want to focus in on what's the status and what's going on to get these done, the ones that are over here on the left. Okay. So you've got the grouping, you've got the filtering you can take advantage of. And then kind of lastly here, I mentioned these other couple of views. You do have charts views. Again, this is a kind of built in. You can't customize this, unfortunately. It just sort of is what it is. But you have the ability to come in and see sort of a snapshot of the status. This looks familiar because this is what you see on the landing page of the hub for Planner when you launch Planner. But how many tasks are in started, how many are in progress, et cetera, et cetera. What bucket do they fall in, what priority, and as you're clicking on these, or actually as you're hovering over these, I should say, it is kind of giving you a little bit more detail about them. And then this view down here that's showing you, again, who's assigned to what. And you can drag some of these things around and so forth in this column here. So there's, again, a really useful way to be able to see this in a charts view. And then the schedule view, as I mentioned before, let me see if I can pick one that's a little bit easier to see. Okay, so the schedule view here, all entirely driven based on the due date of tasks and or start dates that have been assigned to tasks. And then they'll show up in this sort of weekly or monthly view that you can sort of page your way through. You can also, from the Planner hub in the browser, interestingly enough, you can't do this for some reason from the Tasks app in Teams. You can only do this from the browser Planner, but you can hit this little ... more actions, and amongst other things that you could see here, you can do this option that says add plan to Outlook calendar. And then this will give you the ability here to go ahead and connect your Outlook calendar with this Planner schedule so that you can see them in Outlook side by side or overlapped again. Okay, so that often is useful for people that are just driven to going into Outlook to see a schedule. Questions or thoughts or feedback on this at the moment? Okay, I know I'm just kind of blowing through this, but I would like to just kind of tie this up by going back to the slides and talking about kind of bringing all this together here in Teams. So all your tasks, whether they're your tasks or whether they're team-related tasks assigned to you, all in one place using Microsoft Teams. There is an app for that. It is this thing called the Tasks app. You'll see here in the screenshot that, again, it's called Tasks by Planner and To Do today. Eventually will be shortened to Tasks, hopefully soon. If you don't see it, you can search for it in Apps and Teams. As long as it's been enabled and not disabled for use in your tenant. And then you could certainly also pin it so that it shows up in the left rail for Teams, so it's always accessible. Probably some of the most valuable capabilities of having the Tasks app in Teams is the ability to see all in one fell swoop, both your to-do tasks and your planner tasks. Not all planner plans, and I'll tell you more about that in a second, and not all to do not all to do smart lists, but the majority of them. And this is why I feel like the Tasks app in Teams needs to evolve still at this point. But it is still really, really useful. You're in the flow of chatting and meeting and going into team collaboration to kind of quickly go over to all your tasks and see them in that flow is nice, and not having to flip out to a browser or to the to-do app. So I mentioned that you can see, again, the to-do tasks, which are the My tasks here. You can see the shared plans, the ones that are in Planner. The ones that show up in this list, by the way, just I put the note here, is it only shows you in the Task app, it only shows you the Planner plans that have at least been displayed as a tab in one or more channels of which you are a member of a team. Don't ask me why, it just is what it is. So rather than showing you every single plan that you are a member of in sort of a long-running list, this only in fact shows you the Planner plans that have been, either by you or someone, pinned or made available as a tab in a channel inside a team. That's the way it works. So strange enough, but if you're not seeing your Planner plan here and you wish it was, there's a good chance that you would need to go into any of the teams that you're a member of, probably an appropriate team for that plan, and then make it available as a tab, and then it should just simply show up in tasks.
So every time that you stand up a team, you get a plan with that team. That's not it can be turned off, I don't think. And so if it were to show everything, that list could get very long very quickly.
Probably that is the case, yeah. And I know that you have the ability to create plans every time a team gets created. I'm not certain that a default one is created automatically, but you do have the ability to create a new plan every time a team is created. And then, as I mentioned before, you create more than one plan in the context of a team or Microsoft 365 group. So yeah, but to your point, yeah, that list could probably just get really long, really fast. So
Seems like there might be an easier way to let us choose which one show up than to force us to pin it to a channel. But
yeah,
At that point, why use the app, right?
yeah.
exactly. I did see a pop-up question here about to do and planner be a part of GCC. I think it is. I'm also getting stumped, and Noah's nodding his head. So I think it is at the moment. I think both to do and planner are part of the government cloud, have been probably for quite some time here. So
There are 4 things that Noah knows, and I suspect that's one of them.
no one knows those things for sure, and maybe a thing or two about Yammer, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then kind of on this slide, again, one of the big value adds of being able to see all your tasks, whether they be personal or individual tasks and planner tasks in one view, is the ability to do this bulk editing, which if that is something that is useful to you in managing your tasks, that's not something you can do in the to-do app by itself. There is no sort of bulk edit of all my tasks. I want to move the due dates forward. I want to set, the priorities of all these tasks. There's just no simple way to do that in to-do. And there's no simple way to do that in Planner, in those board views and things like that. But in tasks in Teams, you in fact can affect bulk edit changes to certain metadata attributes, to certain items of tasks, not all of them, in this view. And so again, that's one of the big, I guess, value propositions of being able to have the Tasks app in Teams. So let's go take a quick look at that here and just sort of see what that looks like. So I am in fact going to use the browser because I'm logged into this meeting with my Pate group account in my Teams desktop app. So I didn't want to show that necessarily, but just know that the experience is really virtually identical from the Teams desktop app to the Teams in the browser. But I am going to go ahead and launch Teams in this case, logged in with my demo user. And then from Teams, again, if you haven't yet added the Tasks app, you can very easily go either to, the ... or down here into apps, search for tasks. You might have to actually say task by planner or something, but search for tasks. It will show up, and then you'll see it in the list here. I actually already have it pinned here on the left rail. And so when I select that app, it will in fact launch the application. And you'll see it kind of, picks up where I was lastly. And so I happen to have clicked on this product launch event down here. But again, you'll see all the things we showed in the slides a minute ago. The to-do personal tasks, which you could collapse if you really wanted to. The to-do tasks are up top. You could go to your task list. You'll notice right out of the gate that one thing that's different here is that this is all kind of tabular viewed, very much like it is in to-do. You don't get by default that sort of board view like you do in Planner. That was by design, I guess, the way that they wanted to do it. But you can see tasks, you can see important tasks, you can see planned tasks. When you look at some of these lists like planned or important, it's important to notice that the source here is crossing over both my individual to-do tasks as well as any task from a shared plan to which I have been assigned that task. Okay. So this is, again, one of the big advantages of the Tasks app in Teams is that I can see all the tasks that I'm working on, whether they're in To-Do or Planner, in one view. And again, by default, it's in this sort of tabular list-based view, which gives me a chance to do things like sorting by due date, sorting by priority, sorting by source, or so on and so forth. I can do a lot of things useful here. I can see all my custom lists as well, but not every smart list. So smart lists like flagged email doesn't show for some reason. But planned, important, there's that one called assigned to me in tasks, whereas in to do it's called assigned to you, go figure. But it's basically that list. And then down here at the bottom again, these are all the plans that have been in fact pinned or displayed as a tab in one or more channels of a team of which you're a member. Those are the ones that show. And when you select on these, again, you're going to get that by default, the list view, the tabular view of the items in Planner. But you'll notice that you can also switch to the other three views that we saw earlier in the Planner Hub. You can switch to the board view, which is the identical view here. You can even collapse this down and interact with these in the exact same way. Drag and drop these things around just like you did before. Switch and filter, group by, all the stuff by and large that you could do from the browser. You can do here. You can do the charts view, see all the chart related data. You can do the schedule view, see the scheduled data as well. So that's useful that you can see planner plans essentially inside the tasks app in Teams with a very much identical user experience in this case, okay? One of the things though, just I mentioned earlier that there are some shortcomings in my opinion. You'll notice that the task app really by and large is kind of framed on the basis of Planner. I mean, really it is sort of built on that engine. So the to-do stuff doesn't look the same to me. I don't get some of that rich experience. If I wanted to come in and do a new list or plan, I could do that here, and that pops up very much like Planner does. It creates a new plan. I can either create it as a my tasks to do, or I can create it in one of the groups to which I belong as a member in this case. If I add a new task and I want to do that hashtag sales, it doesn't really work. Doesn't work in this case. Actually, it's asking me where I want to store that task because that's a planner task. But if I went to tasks here and said hashtag sales, doesn't work. It's there, but it's not really hashtagable in this app. If I did go back to do, and as long as the sync is working the way it should, let's get rid of this here for a second. It's always when you're trying to demo something that suddenly your device just kind of stops cooperating. But anyway, just suffice to say, that's a shortcoming in my opinion. I find myself having to revert back to the to-do app frequently because I rely on that whole notion of using hashtags and so forth, and it just doesn't work in the Tasks app in Teams. And then I mentioned some other simple things like, you know, if I wanted to connect this schedule to Outlook, I just can't do it here. There's no option, maybe at this, no, not here. There's nothing here to allow me to do that. So unfortunately, I still have to bounce out to the browser and actually be able to get to the sort of the ... experience. Oops, sorry. The kind of the ... experience in a planner board to be able to say connect to Outlook. So there's some shortcomings here. What I heard from the to-do product manager when I talked to him and he was asking me my opinions about certain things is he said that there's consideration, but no guarantee whatsoever from those two engineering teams of rethinking how the Tasks app in Teams is designed from the ground up. And possibly, again, don't take it from me, but just what I had heard from him, possibly we might be looking in the future at some point that this app might not necessarily be entirely based on the Planner framework. Maybe it still has, you know, the right hooks into it, but maybe designed so that it has the best of all the capabilities from both of those applications, which I would really, really appreciate. So that's the last I heard about that. That was months ago, and I don't have any other insight as to that at the moment, but just kind of giving you some sense of that. So as I mentioned before, all of these apps are also available on the browser, or sorry, on the mobile device. If I can get my mobile device to agree here, I'll also just kind of briefly show you that I actually do think this is really pretty useful. If you go into Teams, I'll just use my iPhone again because it's what I have handy. Again, the app bar is at the bottom in the paradigm on mobile as opposed to on the left-hand side. If you don't see that app showing here, you can always hit the more and then, you know, here it is. But if I go into the Tasks app, then again, in fact, they're all those exact same lists, the exact same ones from here. I can go into any one of these. I can, you know, select them and see more details about this and so forth, change the metadata, mark them as complete, etc. Interact with the planner ones and so forth, very much the same. Come in here and I can, you know, go in and search by and sort and filter. Can't really get the planner board view from this app. There is a dedicated planner app if you are so interested to want to actually see it in the columns view. It actually works pretty well, in my opinion, in this case. So, you know, here are all the different columns views if you wanted to do that. And you could even get to the charts and so forth. So if you wanted to get to charts, oops, tap that too easily. Yeah, you want to get to charts, and there's the charts view and so forth. You know, so again, the planner mobile app, the to-do mobile app, the tasks app inside the Teams mobile app, if they're not something that you've started exploring or looking into, would certainly highly encourage you to do that. Okay, we're actually pretty much done. Let me just kind of wrap this up on the slides by saying some closing thoughts are, again, everybody does things differently. So my thoughts on this and the way I advise my customers is, choose tasks and tools, choose the tools for task management that suits you and your workflow. If To Do works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine too, right? But Planner is also one of those apps that truthfully, it's the third bullet there. Truthfully, it's only going to be as valuable as the entire group of people, or most, if not all, have really kind of bought into using it in that way, right? Teams is kind of the same way. There's less value of a team if other people are still emailing stuff around and you're the only one in Teams that's using chat and storing files inside the Files tab, right? So Planner's kind of the same. You have to get people to buy in on using the tasks regularly, updating them, keeping everybody informed, et cetera. And then the last thing is, just like everything else in change management, Noah knows all about this stuff. It requires patience, practice. You got to try to stick with it. It will develop into a habit over time. Again, I, started dabbling with the To Do app a long time ago now, but it didn't take me long to see the value of it. And soon it just became a normal habit of my day. I mean, I'm in To Do early in the day and I'm in To Do at the end of the day, pretty much every work day. It just has become part of my normal workflow and habits. So certainly think that it's something that you just need to stick to. Questions you guys have been talking about all this time, but I'm happy to answer any more, and just glad to have had a chance to visit with you guys today. You can, again, connect with me on Twitter. I'm at RCATX. Same thing on LinkedIn, the RCATX, if you do a search, or certainly can send me email at rcalderon@bategroup.com. And any other questions or comments or feedback from anybody from the group?
Richard, I didn't see you feature. Fantastic, by the way. I loved all of your thoughts, and I am kicking myself that I didn't put all of my tasks in one account, because now I have to toggle between, and you can't do that on the mobile still. So
yeah.
One thing I didn't see, and that I have been in love with since the very first time I saw it at Facebook, actually. So I was doing contract work at Facebook. You could take a post and turn it into a task. And I thought, I think they used TaskBot. You just mentioned TaskBot, and it filed like it was a structured task at that point.
Yeah.
And we now have that.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, absolutely true. Yep. And yeah,
you want to show?
Sure. Yeah, happy to point that out here, because it is, again, relatively new, if you will, but something that people had been clamoring for the longest time. Really was, regardless of whether it's a chat-based, private chat task that you want to create for yourself, or if it's a conversation that you're having inside of a team that you then want to create a task because somebody said, hey, can you get that done for me tomorrow or whatever? And, in the past, you just it was lost in the ether. Today, now you have the ability to go into any chat that you've had with someone. And let's say, Diego, well, I haven't done a whole lot of demoing here on this account lately. But if somebody comes in and asks me to do something, actually, let me do it from a team, because it'd probably just be easy in this case. But if I go into a team and there has been some conversation, let's see, go to market in this case. Okay, there's been some conversation going on in the past, and let's say, this is something I want to set a task to remind myself to do from. You have the ability now in this integration. So right over here with all the little emojis and stuff, the reactions, if you hit more options, and then you have to, it's buried, unfortunately. You have to go down to more actions, but now in this, by default, you have this create task option here from a conversation, where when you select that, it's going to pop up. Oops, sorry. Again, you can see how kind of fragile it is with the mouse, but it is going to pop up this little card that gives you the ability to, in fact, just add this task for yourself in this case. You have to give it a name, obviously. And then you can choose where that task is going to go. It's going to go into either a to-do task, or it's going to go into a plan that is associated with this Microsoft 365 group in this case, and then set priorities and set due dates. When I do training on this, which we usually do as a much longer session, I go into this in detail, and I actually do kind of advise and talk about doing things like, maybe you want to rename this and add those hashtags in and so forth, because when you do that, It will in fact translate over to do, not planner, but it will translate over into to do if that's sort of a method that you've gotten accustomed to. But again, you can just hit add task, and now that task has in fact gotten stored wherever it is you choose to do that. And yeah, so to Noah's point, super, super useful and something that, you know, customers have been asking for the longest time. And Microsoft finally got around to adding that. I don't know, what was it, a few months ago, I guess maybe it's been released at this point. So it's been a little while. Yeah, maybe longer than that. Yeah.
Almost a year.
Since we're in the spirit of sharing what we do,
Yeah.
Richard, so at Journey Team, we want to like promote deep work, right? And one of the things that we do is being fully completed with your day, right?
Mm-hmm.
That before I leave work, I'm done, which means that I need to look at my calendar tomorrow, need to make sure it's tidied up. And I also need to confirm, did I complete the tasks that were critical today? And what needs to be addressed tomorrow while it's fresh, right? And we call it like our end of day tasks. And so if you want to open up insights, what's pretty slick about this is we ended up doing reoccurring tasks that represent that deep work.
Mm-hmm.
And now when you end your day and you do your virtual commute, those reoccurring tasks will show up and saying, hey, did you get that done? And now it ends up being kind of like it can act as though it's like your end of day tasks.
Reinforcing that.
Yeah, reinforcing it, and you can provision your tasks when you do your virtual commute, when you end your day at the same time.
Yeah.
Some of it's getting real commute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, I to Microsoft's credit, they certainly are trying to look forward into ways, again, thinking of tasks as sort of that first class content type, along with all kinds of other things. You know, how can they use the power of the cloud with all the machine learning and AI and ways that it understands the intent behind what you're trying to get accomplished to nudge at you, to recommend and suggest and, you know, say, hey, this was on your list. Do you want to follow up and so forth? And so, yeah, the Viva Insights app, as it's been branded now, is definitely really, really useful from that perspective. I'm sorry. Was there a question? Or
It's just someone yelling into their mic. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was me. I thought I was unmuted. I thought I was muted. Sorry.
You were until just then.
No worries, no worries.
Can we do that now? Is that like a thing? Can I just
So protect
take
time.
myself off mute and scream into the?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking for the tasks.
Christian, we would expect no less from a Duran.
Ah!
I will say that my wife and I were Wunderlist customers, and when Microsoft bought them, we were a little sad for a while, but To-Do has gotten back to where they're almost half as good as Wunderlist was.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a personal To-Do so that we can keep our shopping list there, and I'm not asking her to put stuff into my company list of information. Next month, when we talk about document management and information management, all of y'all will stop putting your personal stuff on company machines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know,
keep that separate.
right. Yeah, everybody's got kind of their own way of doing things. Like I know with my wife, for example, we use an app called AnyList that actually is just something that, you know, allows us to basically manage our grocery shopping list for the most part. I mean, that's what it's for. And it's got a very easy tie into Amazon's, you know, Alexa, because if I say her name, she's going to light up here in my room. But so we just talk at her all the time saying, you know, add apples, add bananas, add salmon or whatever to the list. And it just drops onto that. She and I both have that app on our phone. And when we're grocery shopping, we're running down that list very easily. And we chose to do that rather than To-Do, because again, that was just something that suited her as well as me. And so, you know, there's a million ways to kind of skin the cat, if you will, on all this.
And to go back to the To-Do thing, you talked about the idea that we all had to commit to making it be valuable. And so part of it is making sure that this is the right use case for your team and that or this is the right tool for your use case is what I meant to say.
Definitely.
And if you do that, then it can add a lot of value. For our development group, this is how we did stand-ups, was using Planner, and we would move stuff from bucket to bucket, and we didn't like the 3 statuses, and so we had a testing bucket, and we had a user review bucket, and we had a let's ignore this bucket, and it just moved around as needed.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, a lot of customers of mine lately have certainly started exploring that kind of expanded use of Microsoft lists now, which, you know, again, it's when you hear Mark Cashman talk about it, it sounds so simple, but really there's a lot of overlap potentially there, right? You're tracking information, and then in Planner, you're tracking tasks, which is still information, but just like, when do I use which? And, the obvious maybe is that with lists, your ability to extend and customize is somewhat endless. So you can really get more discrete with metadata and, all the kinds of things. You don't get the sort of snazzy Planner board view with all the columns and the drag and drop, but, you could still do some things with custom views and things like that if you wanted to. So it all kind of, in my opinion, depends on what the use case is, to your point, Kevin. And then I feel like teams have to try to give it a shot and see how it goes. Like, decide how long you're going to give it a go before you make a decision. You just can't see somebody demo and decide yes or no. And you also shouldn't go, we're scrapping everything else and we're just going to use Planner from now on, because you might paint yourself into a corner that you wish you hadn't because you just didn't think out really how that was going to work. So I just tend to encourage teams of people, give it a try. I'm happy to try to guide you through some best practices if at all possible, but I think that's where it ends up determining whether that tool is in fact going to work for you or not.
And as is always the case, having executive leadership buy-in. So you find the guy with the biggest beard and make sure that person's on board.
Yeah.
And then you're good to go.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Richard? We will give you 30 seconds and then we're going to move on. So ask him now. All right. Now for the shortest 30 seconds in recorded history. Thank you so much, Richard. That was great. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your experience.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And clap hands or hit the clap button like Kristen did. Next month, we're doing adaptive cards. Come back, bring a friend. If you come here in person, you can see that you'll have your choice of seating. And there's lots of fun food and things to see here in Draper. And so I encourage you to come and visit with us. If you're online next month, that's certainly great. Richard, we'd love to have more representation from Texas. It'd be great if we had more people here from Texas than we do from Wyoming. Just saying. So adaptive cards next month. December, we're on vacation. And in January, we cover, no, I did that wrong. November is document management. Christian, you were looking at me like I'm an idiot, and I'm kind of used to that, and so I just ignored it. So adaptive cards in January, document management next month. I will promise to you that if you have any responsibility in your business to maintain documents in a legal fashion, you want to be here next month. This is something that we don't think about, and it's something that can cost your organization buckets of money if you don't get right. So next month sounds not like it's exciting, but I promise you it's important. Any last words?
And there's been a lot happening in that space as well. Microsoft has been doing a lot, so.
Yeah, you don't want to have an e-discovery come in and find out that you've got 38 years of documents and you really only should have had 2.
Yeah.
So come next month and learn why that makes sense. Thanks, everyone. Thanks guys.
Kevin.
Thanks for having me, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Have a great
Thanks,
rest of
Richard.
your day.
Bye, team.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, Noah, are you on the road still?
I'm back from Nashville.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you went to the one place I've seen, so I'm just like, oh, let's go to Nashville.